Welcome back to this lecture series on FDR and the New Deal. Today's topic is critics of the New Deal. While many Americans hailed the New Deal as the country's remedy for the Great Depression, others raised questions about FDR's approach to ending the Depression. For example, some African Americans felt that FDR was too concerned with retaining the votes of white Southern Democrats and provided little support for minorities' economic gains. FDR's critics also focused on his tendency to try to please too many different groups in order to advance his political agenda. In addition, some people condemned the New Deal for interfering too much or too little in Americans' lives. One of the primary groups that attacked FDR and the New Deal programs was big business. Leading industrial corporations such as General Motors and General Foods, along with conservative Democrats, were alarmed at FDR's socialist leanings and seeming disregard for the skyrocketing federal deficit. In 1934, they formed the American Liberty League to protect themselves against what they believed to be excessive government interference in private enterprise and the alarming rise of labor unions. In a reference to the communist Soviet Union, the League complained that the New Deal was trying to, quote, Sovietize the New York Stock Exchange, railroads, radios, electrical power, and, most especially, industrial labor. That same year, over 1.5 million workers went on strike to protest unfair labor practices and poor working conditions. As a result of the rising strike activity, the League formed a, quote, citizens' army, which fought on behalf of employers in increasingly violent clashes with striking workers. At times, even New Deal leaders criticized aspects of the program. For example, Secretary of Agriculture Henry Wallace voiced his displeasure that the AAA caused farmers to throw away 100 million pounds of pork that could have been used to feed the poor. The AAA's unpopularity grew as its crop reduction policy actually increased the impoverishment of poor and tenant farmers who typically farmed very small plots of land and were ineligible for the large federal subsidies paid out to corporate farms. Several of FDR's critics successfully organized groups to publicly oppose aspects of the New Deal. In Long Beach, California, Dr. Francis Townsend led a group of elderly people who came to be known as Townsendites. Townsend and his supporters felt that FDR sorely neglected the elderly and advocated for an extensive old age pension plan. However, the House ultimately rejected Townsend's proposal that Americans over age 60 receive $200 per month in benefits, as it would have cost taxpayers half the national average income per year. Huey Long, a charismatic leftist senator from Alabama, was also unimpressed with FDR. Long preached on the radio that greedy businessmen had upset the balance of the nation's wealth and that the banks were using FDR as a tool for their own interests. Long's Share Our Wealth program proposed a dramatic redistribution of the nation's money. He argued that the federal government should seize, through taxation, all incomes over $1 million and all inheritances over $5 million in order to give a $2,000 annual income to every American family, along with allowances for a car, a home, a radio, and free college educations for every child. He promised that under his proposal, quote, every man would be king, end quote. Long's proposal made him a serious contender to FDR in the presidential election of 1936, but an assassin's bullet ended his colorful and illustrious career in 1935. Another critic, Catholic priest Father Charles Coughlin, initially believed that FDR's New Deal was, quote, Christ's deal. He then changed his mind and persuaded his over 30 million radio listeners that FDR was on the side of big business. Eventually, Coughlin, whose ideas became increasingly fascist and strongly anti-Semitic, joined with Townsend and Long's successor, Gerald Smith, to form the Union Party. The Union Party attempted to challenge FDR in the 1936 presidential election, but they were trampled by FDR's landslide victory. While FDR lost some public and political support during the later phases of the New Deal, none of his critics or opponents ever managed to significantly quell his popularity.